Hey there, it's Dream, and with the Largo Arena Cup expected to be released next week, today's video is going to be about Largo's mechanics, his weaknesses, and how you should go about building a strategy and a composition to beat him. I want to preface this video by saying that the clear rate of Largo in JP on release was abysmal. He's an extremely tanky little lad, so don't feel pressured to wail or no-life grind to be able to beat him right away. In the upcoming days to his release, I assume we'll get an announcement about a Largo Cup race community event, but you should treat this as a bonus if you're able to clear him and not a goal that you have to get. Arenas are permanent content, so take them at your own pace and don't feel pressured to beat them right away. Because of Largo's difficulty, the JP player base documented his fight extremely well for us. So a shout out to the writers of his breakdown on the Game 8 website, along with the team in the COTC Discord that is linked below in the description and the comment, for doing the research and the strategy crafting that I will be using in this video. Aside from posting my first clear of Largo, and then my race video submission like I normally do, after his release, I hope to collaborate with the Discord team again to release a follow-up guide for budget and new players once we've tested out what you can get away with in terms of lacking A4 accessories or specialty characters, especially limited time units. So look forward to those videos in the coming future. So now let's get into Largo's fight itself. He has around 1.2 million HP and has similar defensive stats to that of Yan Lan. That means that you can use your output in Yan Lan's fight to get a general gauge of how hard you're going to be hitting Largo. Largo is a multi-element attacker with a variety of AoE and single-target spear attacks, alongside some fire AoEs and lightning nukes. His arena gimmick is that he has 4 waves of 2 mobs that he will summon at different HP thresholds. The first starting at the beginning of turn 1, the second at below 85% HP, the third at below 65% HP, and the final phase below 45% HP. The bottom mob of each of these pairs will cast cover as the very first action of the turn that they are summoned, meaning that all attacks that go onto Largo himself will be blocked while the ad is alive or unbroken. This means that you are forced to kill the ads before starting your attacks on Largo. After killing the first set of ads and then breaking Largo for the first time, it's possible to nuke him down to below 65% HP, sending him straight to his third HP threshold. After a break turn is ended, there's always a free turn to shave shields before he will resummon the next wave of mobs. The turn after that free turn, he will summon that second wave of mobs that we bypassed and immediately kill them at the end of that same turn. However, he will be covered during that turn by the mobs. The next turn, he will then summon a third wave of ads that his current HP threshold calls for. This means that we can skip mob phases at the cost of a dead turn, since the skipped wave's ads will still be covering for him while we wait for that current HP threshold wave to come. He also has a Berserk mode that happens when he is below 25% HP or when he senses that enough damage has been dealt to the fourth wave of mobs. While he is Berserk, he will attack 3 times a turn, so much like the other arena fights, our goal is to completely skip this phase. Now that we understand how his fight works, let's talk about its weaknesses. Largo himself has 27 shields and is weak to dagger, bow, and ice, making our team of main nukers going to be centered around thieves, scholars, and hunters. His waves of mobs, however, have a much more varied spread of weaknesses, but they come with much less HP than Largo himself, sitting at between 60k and 110k HP each. Most of their weaknesses also happen to be hittable by the notable nukers that we're bringing for Largo himself, so it ends up not being too big of a problem. Now let's talk about ways that we're going to approach this fight strategy-wise. You want to build your plan around how many breaks you're going to take to kill him. In the case that you're a Giga Whale, you can shoot for a 1 break clear, but if you're that kind of player, you probably don't need my help, so I'm going to skip over this one for now. In the case that you have strong nukers, up-to-date gear for them, you're shooting for a 2 break clear realistically, in which you kill the first wave of ads, nuke Largo down to about 55% HP, kill his third wave of ads, and then nuke him from 45 to 0 in one go. In the case that you only have 1 or 2 strong nukers for this specific fight, and a wide cast of support and utility units, you can go for a 3+ break clear, but in order to do that, you have to pick which wave is best for your comp to skip, and then be prepared to either deal with his 4th wave of mobs completely, or his Berserk phase. This is obviously the hardest way to go about clearing this fight, so I'm not going to cover the idea in this video, but hopefully, after release, we will have found some working strategies, and the post-release follow-up guide will cover that. So, after covering our options, the 2 break method is the one that I recommend and that we'll be building towards for the rest of this video. With that in mind, let's outline how it will work in the actual fight. Turn 1, he will summon his mobs that will instantly cover him. We will use this turn to start things up like regen, buffs, debuffs, and attacks onto the adds. Turns 2 or 3, you're going to work towards capping your nuker's buffs and eating away at the adds' HPs. Ideally, your team is strong enough to kill the adds without having to break them in wave 1. I'm not going to plan around actually hitting 17 or 19 shields off of them for this one. Turns 3/4, we're going to set up for Largo's break by extending our buffs and moving our debuffs to him while shaving down his 27 shields. Turn 5 is our ideal break turn, since it's going to be his first attempted cast of his ultimate, which this time around will be a bleeding 3-hit fire nuke. If your team can't break him by turn 5, then pray that your units have the HP to eat a bleed and survive the spear nuke that's coming after the break is over. During our first break of him, we want to knock him down to about 55% HP, somewhere near the middle of his ice weakness icon. We don't want to get him too low because we don't want him crossing that 45% HP threshold during our shield shave phase coming up. Directly after his first break, if we kept him on the attack cycle and broke turn 5, he will open with a newly upgraded spear AoE attack. If we didn't and we broke him on turn 6, he will instead be doing a large single target poison spear nuke. But most importantly during this turn, he will not be summoning adds yet. We will take this turn to get as many shields off of him as we possibly can. During turns 7/8, he will now summon wave 2 of his mobs, and we will spend this turn rebuffing and healing since the mobs are covering for him anyway and they're about to die by themselves. In turns 8/9 and going forward, he will kill wave 2 and then summon wave 3, which will now be guarding him. We're going to work towards killing the wave 3 mobs with a balance of burst heals to keep us afloat. The wave 3 mobs are a bit tankier than the wave 1 mobs were, so you'll probably need to break their shields down to actually kill them this time. Like stated earlier, he will try to cast his ultimate every 5 turns, excluding the turn that he was full broken and couldn't pick a cast. So on turn 11, he should be winding up his second ult, which is going to be a lightning nuke with 2 turns of paralyze. You will probably still be fighting the adds by this point, so keep it in mind and be ready to tank it. Once all of the adds are cleared, we get Largo set up for a break, we refill our buffs, we're ready to go. Ideally, his HP bar is right between the bow and ice weakness icons going into this break. So now we break him and nuke him down over the next 2 to 3 turns. This is requiring between 540k and 600k damage depending on how low you got him. This means that your nukers during this final break need to be averaging about 70k each per hit, the stronger hitters making up for the less strong hitters. You will then have the turn after his break to freely hit him again if you need it. But if you can't kill him during the break or that extra turn afterwards, he will go berserk and he will also become guarded by his 4th wave of mobs, effectively ending your attempt at this fight. Now that we have the strategy put together in our minds, let's go over characters that you can use to make a composition to pull it off successfully. First, let's start off with our nukers. As I stated earlier, Largo's weaknesses are dagger, bow, and ice. Since our strategy revolves around killing him in 2 breaks, we'll need a comp of very capable thieves, scholars, and hunters. Let's start with his ice weakness, since it's the one he shares with most of the wave 1 and wave 3 adds. The go to this fight is obviously going to be Cyrus. He has a mean single target ice nuke, a 3-hit ice, and a 3-hit lightning AoE, as well for the mobs and shield shaving. In my opinion, if you have him, he's coming to the fight regardless of if ice is your main focus for Largo himself or not. Next up we have Sophia and Liana, both solid ice nukers in their own right that also come with ice res down debuffs for your breaks on Largo himself. Without at least 2 out of 3 of these last units I talked about, I probably wouldn't make ice my main focus, but they're still great to bring as ad slayers and side DPS. In the case that you are making ice your main focus, that also brings Azlight into the mix, as she can add ice res down passively on break, actively with her skills, and specially with her ultimate. That being said, if I was bringing just a solo Cyrus or a solo Liana to this, I would not bring Azlight as only one character would be benefiting from her coming. Next, let's talk about our dagger DPS. Of course, we have our King and Queen, Therian, and A2. Both have insane nuking ability while also bringing physical defense down and shield crack abilities for the adds. A2 will be a bit harder to take advantage of due to the downside of her berserk move. With a little planning though, and a little luck, she will rip into Largo during that second break. Therian suffers from SP management, but so long as you aren't spamming his Hellfire to do adds back to back, he should be fine. Next up, we have Falco and Adele, both solid nukers in their own right. Falco coming with some debuffs and a 15% dagger passive up for the whole team, and Adele with her shield cracks, guaranteed crit move, and amazing smile. In the middle tier for thieves, we also have Ritu, Nicola, and Heathcote, but these are more desperation side picks than anything else in my opinion, but they have their uses for this fight all the same. Now on to our hunters. I want to preface this section by saying that unlike Ice and Thieves, hunters are really only good for hitting Largo. While we have quite a few options, I wouldn't make them the main focus of your comp the way you can do with Ice, so if you're bringing a hunter, I recommend pairing it alongside a group of physical DPS thieves. So, let's talk about our hunters. Zonta and Kurz, the two #1 picks. Zonta with his insane nuking power and 5-hit shield shave, also has to deal with mana issues if you use him outside of hitting Largo. Kurz has a decent shield shaving ability, notable single target nuke, and brings bow res down for himself and anyone else if you happen to bring 2. Mommy Jill can also be used in this tier, but you have to get lucky and proc her bleed from either her 3-hit shield shave or her smaller nuke, because her nuking power is super dependent on the target being bleeding. In the middle tier, we have Scarecrow, Haunted, and Uni, who can give decent shield shaves and nukes, but don't really match the power of the other ones that we just talked about. Now that we have an idea of our strong nukers, let's talk about our strong supporting characters, starting with healers. Ophelia and Alphen are our standout healers at the moment. Ophelia with her access to a regen and a burst heal that comes with defense and magic defense buffs, while Alphen has access to a regen with a fire res buff, notable for this fight, a 4-hit ice attack, and his signature pomegranate boost skill to let our nukers use more BP over the fight. This fight is so damage heavy that I would honestly recommend bringing both of them if you have access to both of them, and if not, bringing one of them and pairing them with a side unit. Notable healers you can use to fill this slot are Anyas, who has both a regen and a burst heal, and a 2-hit wind for the adds. Liana, who of course we talked about has 3-hit ice, but also a burst healing skill. Solil, who has a regen and burst heal with a cure. In the middle tier of healers, we have things like Theo with his regen, Millard with his burst heal and single target defense buffs, and Hasame with her burst heal and defense buffs. And of course, honorable mention for Ramona with her burst heal and ice attacks. For the buffing side of our supports, we have of course our Queen Lynette, who can give passive, active, and special buffs to the party, making a 2-break kill much more viable. Titi, who can self-cap your team's active buffs and debuff the enemy's attack and defense. Primrose, who can give active team buffs and debuff the enemy's defense. And on a more defensive side, we have buffing units like Glossom, who can self-cap physical defense buffs. Harley, who can give defense buffs and attack down debuffs to the enemy, and hit the weaknesses of the third wave of adds with his wind skills. And then finally, we have our debuff queen, Viola, who has access to an attack down and defense down that bypasses the adds cover ability. This means that she can make your team both hit hard and survive much easier. Also has access to some AoE shield crack abilities to help with the mobs. So aside from the 2 healers that we're definitely putting into our comp, how do we pick which supports we want, either offensive or defensive? It's going to depend on the HP of your units. You can help augment it with things like the Origin Weapon series, your accessories for bonus HP and regen, and then of course having A3s on some of your units is going to help a ton. But in the case that you don't have access to A3 on your units, that's where things like an Ophelia Harley, to make sure that you're fully capped on your defense and elemental defense buffs are. That's where your TT plus a Viola comes in to make sure that Largo is full attack down the whole fight. You just need to find your account's correct mix of defense buffs and offensive buffs so that you stay alive while killing those adds in wave 3, but still have enough damage to kill him during that second break. So now that we know our strat, and which characters can help us accomplish it, let's talk about some sample compositions that you can use to get an idea of combos of units to bring and how to slot them. For the Ice Team example, I'm using the one that Wiggly laid out inside of the COTC Discord, using what units he has access to. We have Sophia, Harley, Cyrus, Viola, Lynette, Alphen, Ophelia, and Azlight. We have an Ice Attacker in every single row, so there's never a wasted one during breaks. Our Lynette is paired with our least important DPS to buff. Viola and Lynette together can cap the magic defense down on Largo. Harley and Ophelia together can cap the defense and magic defense of the team. Azlight and Sophia can cap the ice res down of Largo. Then finally, Harley and Viola can cap the physical attack down on Largo as well. The whole team is made to complement either another unit or the team as a whole. They're spaced out in rows and ways where they don't trip over each other to do it. It's a solid team both for offense and for defense, expecting not to be carried by A3s. Which is in contrast to my personal team. The physical team example we're using for today is my current day 1 team comp, which focuses a lot heavier on the offense output instead of the defensive buffs. So for our physical nuker team, we have Therian, Cyrus, A2, Viola, Lynette, Alphen, Zonta, Liana. I'm taking my 3 most powerful physical nukers in different rows, and then planning to abuse Alphen's pomegranate skill during both breaks. Lynette is paired up with him to help shave on the not weak to ice ad during wave 3, and to buff the team for both breaks as well. Cyrus is behind Therian so that he can slay ads while Therian recovers SP. Liana is there to do the same for Zonta, while also offering burst heals during wave 3. A2 and Viola will cap his defense down. Liana and Viola will cap his attack and magic attack down. Alphen's fire resistance and Liana's magic defense will make his fire AoEs tickle. And then finally, like I said before, Alphen's pomegranate skill will allow Therian and A2 to each attack 4 times during that final break with max BP, making it free if I can get to that point alive. You don't have to have 3 super powerful attackers to do this. You also don't have to have Alphen. In that case, you would just put a 4th attacker in that row to compensate and replace Liana with an Ophelia or an Agnes or a Solil, someone that can spam regen and burst healing all by themselves. These of course are both very 5-star heavy comps and kind of ideal rosters for tackling this fight. I don't want to be too charitable in my example comps for this video since we don't know what we can get away with in global yet. Hopefully, my post-release guide will include a much wider use of non-best in slot units and show you guys more variety in units you can use to clear. And that's it for this video. If you made it this far, I appreciate you. I hope you feel a lot more prepared for Largo, or at least have an idea of what you want your account to look like by the time you want to tackle him. Don't forget to subscribe to see more COTC videos like this one. Please join us in the Discord link down below, as the amazing community in there is what makes videos like this possible. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe, stay cute, much love, booyah.